Well, those 49 white Afrikaners, South Africans who left the country on Sunday night are now beginning the process of resettling as refugees in the United States. They left the country saying that they were being persecuted in the country and faced violence that was targeted at the minority group. President Cyril Ramaphosa, speaking at an African CEOs summit this week as well, has said it's not true that they are refugees and that he intends to raise the matter when he meets with the US President Donald Trump in the coming days. Let's talk more about this then with Kim Heller, author of No White Lies, who's been very critical, in fact, of the whole process. Kim, good to have you on SABC News. Let's start on that point, because I was looking at something that you put out on social media earlier, where you basically said this in reference to yourself and other white people, am I right? Where you said, we have failed the humanity test and we have largely, you say, remained unrepentant and racist in reference to everything that's been going on with the resettlement of these Afrikaners. What prompted that thought from you?
Thank you. First of all, forgive me. You know, white people don't often ask for forgiveness, but I ask for forgiveness for my dark background. We've just gone into load shedding, you know, in the dark continent that is Africa and South Africa. So I do apologize to you and your viewers. Well, certainly this exodus of Afrikaners is very telling, but I also think it reflects on all of us as white South Africans, because it shows that we were given the hand of friendship by Nelson Mandela and the ANC government and the people of the legitimate owners of South Africa. But what have we done? For 30 years, we've abused that hand of friendship. And that's why I've said we failed the humanity test. In fact, we are here at the grace of the humanity of African people who our forefathers abused and committed great acts of inhumanity, crimes of humanity against the forefathers of Black South Africans. And yet, now when it becomes a bit uncomfortable as equality and equity starts to show its head, we see that white South Africans, most notably the Afrikaner sector, now flee. And you know, I can't get it into my head that these people who have actually been villains in the history of South Africa, who have dislocated Black South Africans from the economy and the culture, and yet they play victimhood so well. And I actually said, I believe that the Afrikaners and the Zionists need a homeland of their own, because the white supremacy, the Jewish supremacy, the entitlement is absolutely astonishing. To be regarded as refugees is absolutely atrocious. These are racists.
I wonder to what extent the events of especially the last 2 months or so are, in essence, the ripping off of the Band-Aid on what was always perhaps the reality of race relations that we wish to gloss over post-1994.
That's absolutely it. I couldn't say it better myself. And that's why it prompted me to write my book many years ago, which was a call to white people, white South Africans like myself, to say, dear white South Africans, it's time to return the land. It's time to show respect for African languages. It's time to redistribute the wealth that you have that doesn't belong to you, that was taken on the pain, on the spine and skeletons, actually, of Africans. So I think this is an inflection point for white South Africans, and we must be careful not to say that we have a splinter group of Afrikaners who've gone. This is the mindset and the consciousness of every white South African in this country. We have done very little to show that we repent for the sins of apartheid and colonialism. We've done very little to return stolen goods back to the rightful owners. So we mustn't see this as an isolated thing. We have to say, white South Africans, you've been given the gift of humanity by the ANC, who have focused, in my view, too much on non-racialism, but have honored the concept of non-racialism. And this is how you reward them? It's absolutely shocking. My view is that most white South Africans don't want to be governed by a black government. And
How
I
do you
think
make that assessment, Kim, just on the point that you're making when you say most white South Africans don't want to be governed by a black government? Because there are many who will be listening to you and I right now when this conversation goes online who will say, well, I'm staying in South Africa and I don't have an issue with living in a country where the leaders are black or from a party that has a leadership that is predominantly made up of black people. Are they lying?
Well, I think they're tolerating it because, unfortunately, the ANC has become a party that has placed white interests above the dignity of a black child or the well-being of the black majority. So for now, the ANC's actually being the caretaker of white interests. I think there's a fear that we have more radical parties like the EFF coming in and reclaiming the dignity of a black child, pushing a far more black consciousness agenda. And it's a pity because in 1994, the black consciousness agenda should have been put at the fore. Now, if you tell me that white people are happy with the black government, why have white people not contributed wealth, their wealth that they accrued under apartheid and redistributed that? Why have they not extended a hand to the ANC government and said, we will help you build a country? No, we haven't done that. What we've done is we've kept our privilege and our power, and we will hold on to that. And when it becomes uncomfortable, then we'll leave. And I'll be attacked for saying this, but I believe that is at the heart of most South Africans. I mean, the arrogance of not learning African languages, the arrogance of insisting that the STEM is part of our national voice, yet that the arrogance of a white person saying to black people and black activists who've lost friends, families in apartheid struggle, that you cannot sing a struggle song. That is the arrogance that I worry about, and why I say white people have not succumbed to black rule. They have simply maintained their privilege, and that is what makes them comfortable.
And if the available data disproves the unsubstantiated claims of a so-called white genocide in the country, these false claims of the confiscation of Afrikaner-owned land in particular, why do you think the explanations advanced by the South African government have not stuck with Trump, President Trump at the White House? Why do they simply not want to believe those clarifications?
Well, I think Trump is uninclined to listen to anyone, and particularly an African leader. I think he's shown arrogance and a dismissal of the voice of most African leaders. I do think the South African government and the president has spoken very well and correctly about this myth and very dangerous propaganda of white persecution, when actually we know it's exactly the opposite. But sometimes the truth and correct statistics get in the way of the arguments and dogma of white supremacy. So it will sustain that. And what we see, which worries me, is a crest of a wave of racist right-wing governments across the world. We definitely see a swing towards white supremacy across the world. So Donald Trump is speaking, I think, to that component of the world.
On that point, then, can any good come from the meeting that we're expecting between President Ramaphosa and President Trump, possibly as soon as next week?
Well, the issue is whether Donald Trump is going to take Cyril Ramaphosa seriously. And to date, he hasn't. The fact that he's allowing the voice of Elon Musk and whites trump over the voice of the president of the country is very telling of who Donald Trump respects. So I do hope that the president puts up a strong fight, but it might be immaterial. I think Donald Trump has disregard for Africa and most of the leaders.
Kim Heller, good to speak to you. Kim is the author of No White Lies. Thank you for your time this evening.